can't ask for more." Hearing Benimaru's words, Testarossa showed a voluptuous smile. It would be an unbearable humiliation in Testarossa's opinion if there was nothing to do after sweeping away the stray fish, although, unlike Ultima, she wouldn't voice her displeasure. If Benimaru really ordered Testarossa to stay, she would always feel displeased no matter what. "In order to keep anyone from escaping from that flying ship, let's leave 100 watchmen behind. The remaining 500 upper demon knights, I want them to support the Gable line, but who's going to be in command? In that case, Cian is more appropriate. He's been my old man for as long as Moss has, and is good at chores." Cian, who was mentioned by name, raised his head, wondering if he was happy to be remembered by Testarossa, his eyes a little moist. "All right. Then Cian, you go over there now." "Yes, I know." Cian immediately sprang into action, leaving his own 100 dependents behind, and flew off with all the other Black Legionnaires on the spot. With these reinforcements, Gable should be able to avoid being wiped out. And so the course was set. That is, first a preemptive attack by Testarossa, then a select group of elites burst into the airship. Finally the Emperor's flagship siege was blocked off by 100 upper-ranking demon knights. To break into the enemy's line, the subordinates of Benimaru, Xion, and Diablo, plus the 3 demon lords and 4 demon princes will also be heading to the battlefield. Veyron, Ajira, Esprit, Zonda, be grateful for being chosen. Carrera said so, but she must have been happier than anyone in person. Kufufufu. So, everyone, good luck in your battles. After the topic was over, Diablo smiled and said greetings to everyone. The first to respond to him was Testarossa. "Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo, then hear ye well, and if any man shall live from my blessing, settle him well. Even an enemy can't let them get away with it. Understand?" To her own dependents, Testarossa gave orders to go and be a hound. To the demons, it was actually not necessary to say any more than that it was their mission, but no one put that out there. Until then, can anyone really withstand the attacks of the current Testarossa? Instead, it's a matter of thinking about it. After giving the order to the subordinates, Testarossa immediately set off in the direction of the prey. Next, Benimaru they also flew into the sky. The others were not to be outdone. The other demons also immediately scattered, and in the blink of an eye, the encirclement of the Emperor's flagship was completed. The showdown in the sky was about to begin. Originally everyone thought so. Ultima and Carrera were about to start acting as well, when the former suddenly thought of something and cocked her head. "So, what are you responsible for, Diablo?" When she heard Ultima's question, Carrera, who was so concerned, turned her head back. Diablo had a look of something exposed. However, he didn't panic, just smiled and answered the 2 female demons. "So, I have other important work to do." Seeing his smile made Ultima and Carrera feel even more suspicious. "You said there was a mouse, who exactly?" Carrera began to pursue it that way. "That's not what you need to know."
Okay, wait a minute.
"Diablo, I don't think it's a good idea to keep something from everyone." "Exactly. Isn't it important to share information, too, of Rimuru-sama?" After being spat at like that, Diablo had to answer too. "And I, with the courage of Lord Rimuru, have this noble mission. This is very important work and I can't entrust it to you." So he had the audacity to say such stupid things. It's a good thing Benimaru isn't here anymore. However, even if he were still here, it would probably just be complete silence. However, Ultima and Carrera could not accept this. "What's that? We'd like to see Lord Rimuru come alive too." "You wait a minute, it'll have to be detailed. Do you want to have the sweet spot all to yourself? Even if you're our boss, it's a bit unreasonable." This was a really natural reaction from Ultima and Carrera. Ultima thought, why didn't Benimaru himself question Diablo so much when he was still around? Carrera sensed the unfavorable situation. Things would be different if Testarossa was still in the situation, and Ultima and herself alone could not do anything about Diablo. Oh yeah, you guys seem a little upset, huh? Of course we do. We will obey, but we cannot accept. Diablo also thought about it. I can't help it. So, I'll tell you the truth. In fact, there's a man amongst the enemy who can manipulate foreign space. I think it's probably Lord Veilgrind, and if imprisoned by that, I'm afraid the connection to the present world will be cut off. I see, if that's the case, who really is better off staying? Diablo nodded with a good-natured face. That's how it is. As much as I want to fight, it's a shame. In this way he could justify himself, Diablo snickered inwardly. Diablo's mind is so high and his ability to make excuses is second to none, which is why he's the black partner that Rimuru relies on when he's troubled. However, Ultima's ability to cut to the heart's content was also sharp. So, who's the little mouse? Diablo smacked his tongue in his chest. It was good to watch Rimuru and Veilgrind fight, but the delay of the obstructors in leaving still made him impatient. What a pity, Ultima. I thought if it was you, even if I don't know, you'd be able to detect it. With a somewhat obnoxious expression, Diablo answered Ultima. There was no need to hide it anyway, so he answered honestly. That's Yuki Kagurazuka. I just scouted out the scent of the flying airship, but there was no match for Yuki. If he's just lurking somewhere inside the ship, it's not a problem, but if he comes out and interferes with Lord Rimuru, he can't be left alone, can he? Indeed, it will be against Lord Rimuru's decree.
Well, it's never okay for someone to run out and interfere with Lord Rimuru.
That's how it is. Since we don't know the purpose of the little mouse yet, we must have at least one person left behind to keep an eye on Rimuru-sama. Diablo's heartfelt reasons for wanting to watch Rimuru fight were half of the reasons, and the other half were premised on the completion of his duties. However, the truthful side is a bit higher. All in all, Ultima and Carrera were finally approving, and while they were ultimately disgruntled, they also acknowledged that Diablo was right. Let's just forget it. Let's just take it out on the people over there. Well, let it go. No one will complain if I make a scene, right? That's for sure. Otherwise, it wouldn't hurt for you to get rid of Rudra. Well, that does seem like fun too. Well, you can have your seat here. Right. Let's go make a scene and let off some steam. Yes, Diablo nodded his head with one force. That level of flattery would have been too cheap to get the two pillars to accept in the first place. If they went late, the benefits would be taken away from them all, and Carrera and Ultima hurried away with such talk. Please do your best. Diablo watched the two leave with a smile on his face. Next, Diablo also flew into the sky in order to follow Rimuru. After everyone has left. Laplace thought this. No one is looking at his family. Being left behind by the crowds made Laplace feel a little lonely. In that case, let's go save Lady Kagali. After greeting the clearing where no one was, Laplace also left the place, and then, without anyone's knowledge, things have changed. Demons that evolved in response to Rimuru's rage. They rebuilt their flesh at an alarming rate, gaining new abilities, all through a food chang, returning the accumulated power for a period of time unknown to Rimuru. As of just a moment ago, there was the awakening of Geld. Again, the demons do not reason with evolution. Others who have not yet awakened will join them soon. All of this does not simply stop at the awakening evolutionary stage. All were managed efficiently, making it an important factor in the increase of Rimuru's power. More effective and better suited for real-world combat. Even the upper limit, which no one yet knows, is to be exceeded, and Rimuru's power is waiting for the moment to be liberated. There were several men in the bow of the Emperor's flagship. With Rudra at the head, Kondo and Damrada were standing behind him, while the surrounding four corners were guarded by a sequence of 3 to 6 4 knights. Malcolm also stood behind Kondo, and all the remaining digits had been gathered in this place. To Rudra's right, it was Veilgrind's fixed position, and in order to protect Rudra in case of any eventuality, she had left the last of her other bodies here. However, in order to focus her energies on the battle with Rimuru, the present Veilgrind let the body sit in the settled chair, then drew consciousness from it to make it snuggle up against Rudra. Rudra tenderly stroked Veilgrind's blue hair in this state and looked out at the outgoing demon lord Rimuru with a hateful mutter. That's an exception. It was a lapse in judgment on my part. The first thing that should be taken care of is the slime. This is tantamount to declaring that the battle is not over. Until just now, this place was in the midst of a victory celebration for the capture of Veldora. Now, however, there isn't even a hint of that vibe left. They all have recognized Rimuru as an enemy. Led by the manifested demon lord Rimuru, even the subordinate-level monsters had returned, but at this time, Rudra and others were still more subdued. Humph, to have escaped from the dream fortress, we seem to be underestimating them. Is it because the owner, who is the source of the power, was taken away from him that he came back alive? Rudra snorted. However, after witnessing Kondo's attack being nullified by Rimuru, he also had to look at the whole situation cautiously. More to the point, it's the demons that Rimuru summons that are the problem. Flesh-bearing ascendant demons were troublesome enough, but Rimuru had strengthened the demons again in front of the crowd. Because it was not clear what he had done, he was certainly wary of it. Tatsuya, you have no mercy, do you? Of course. The boundary breaker and the spell breaker, both of which are ineffective against them, seem to be opponents that I can't defeat without using my true skills. Kondo made a reply, looking at Demon Lord Rimuru and also generating thoughts of his own lapse in judgment. Like Rudra said, he also considered Rimuru to be an extremely dangerous opponent. Before the priority was to capture Veldora, it seems that was wrong. Instead of going after just one of them, they should go after both Veldora and Rimuru. Even though this is now perceived, the situation has changed. Kondo knew that Demon Lord Rimuru was an enemy with whom one could not be careless. That's why he uses tactics to trap his opponent in a trap and dispose of it separately when he's ready. At first, it was thought that by taking away Veldora, Rimuru's patron, Rimuru would naturally succumb. Yet now, Kondo's judgment was a muddle. In the same way that Rimuru is a counter-scaled being to Veldora, Veldora is a counter-scaled being to Rimuru. It was because Kondo was the first to realize that he had touched his opponent's reverse scales that he was quicker than everyone else to take care of Rimuru. The attack used is the Boundary Breaker and Spell Breaker, which are Kondo's strongest attacks at this time when the kamikaze shot is not available. However, it turned out to be a trick that didn't hurt Rimuru at all and couldn't even stop him from moving. If you take away Veldora, the source of your power, you will become a powerless demon lord. That's not true at all. It was a raging, tyrannical will because allies were taken from them. It should be thought of this way. Don't be lenient. If you don't use ultimate skills to challenge, you'll lose. Kondo made such a judgment. Since he said so, the four horsemen can't win either. Let him try the power of the newly arrived Veldora first. Without Kondo needing to ask, Rudra understood how threatening Rimuru was. Still, he made a point of illustrating it so that it would be a point of consensus for all present. Single digits are the strongest that Rudra has worked so hard to assemble. It is for this reason that the enemy's level of threat must now be allowed to become their consensus, and they must be reminded to avoid errors of judgment at critical moments. Rimuru is indeed a threat, but not an unscrupulous opponent as long as he's not careless, but it is also now necessary to avoid the loss of battle power that is not easily gathered. Rudra remained cautious at all times until the final grand showdown began. He is hoping to challenge Guy with the lineup intact. From the status quo, it's close to victory. The capture of Veldora brought great advantage to the Empire. In Rudra's opinion, it was just one step away from drawing the finishing characters for his and Guy's long-running wins. A lapse at such a time is never allowed. So, to be sure, Rudra chose to let Veldora take on Rimuru, and with Veilgrind's support, he was sure that nothing would happen to him. In the meantime, it was up to Kondo and the others to deal with Raimuru's minions, so that there should be no more problems. If possible, Rudra wanted to take Raimuru under his command as well, but since things had turned out that way, he had to rule it out. The real target, Veldora, was already in control, and the plan could not be allowed to spiral out of control because of the local demon lord. Originally, something like the demon lord was a very fragile existence compared to the true dragon race. It is for this reason that Rudra acknowledges Raimuru as a threat on the one hand, and determines that the battle is unlikely to fail on the other. The true dragon race is the most powerful in the world. Since he had 2 true dragons in his hands, Raimuru's defeat was inevitable, and it was only natural that Rudra would think so. But it wasn't as if nothing could make him care. At that time, why did Veldora stop resisting my domination? It's that little doubt. Given enough time, Rudra's domination would surely succeed in the end no matter what. Having realized this, Veldora gave up, which makes sense. However, Rudra always felt that there was more to the reason than that. The mere fact that Rudra was able to feel Veldora's anger intact through the king's power shows that the storm dragon is not the kind of character to give up easily. Could it be that Veldora was guarding something more important than himself? Such doubts lingered in Rudra's mind. If that's the case, the important thing. No, I don't think so. Rudra shook his head in denial. Veelgrin shifted back into human form and came to Veldora's side, then tenderly approached her brother's head and stroked his dragon scales. Good boy. The next time you wake up, we'll be companions. And then, I'll cherish you. Veelgrind already has a hunch that the long game is coming to an end. However, things will not be so simple. Suddenly, Raimuru appeared. The ill-advised obstructionist made Veelgrin's mood a lot worse. But at the same time, she also developed a bit of a sense of crisis. How the other party escaped from the dream fortress made her wonder. Then, in the presence of Veelgrind, who was pondering what to do next, things went in an unexpected direction. Raimuru summoned up a large number of demons and then granted them power as if deliberately done to the onlookers. This is provocation. It was too daring to show your card in front of Veelgrind and stop it if you could. That's not all. Testarossa and the other primordials, among the demons summoned by Raimuru, had evolved into the true demon lords, a higher being, somehow. Veelgrind, who had produced the above sentiment, had become completely wary of Raimuru. On top of that, there are other unusual parts. Raimuru's anger generated fluctuations that were actually on the same level as her brother Veldora. A mere slime who has become a demon lord, but with the same level of dominance as her own true dragon race, is a reality that makes Veelgrind unbelieving. That alone makes it clear that there must be something unusual going on. If only to hear such a report from someone else, Veelgrind would have thought it impossible and laughed it off, and since she had seen it with her own eyes, she could not believe it. In front of her eyes, this maiden-like demon lord continued to unleash unbridled waves of fury. This fluctuation couldn't be more clear about his danger. A human without patience would die instantly just from exposure to this fluctuation. No, it's not just humans. Any higher being that is not a superior being that can be called strong, a being defined by humanity as A-ranked, will die because it cannot resist. It's an overwhelming demon lord that can rival the true dragon race.
Okay, what to do now?
That slime is a being that even the primordials can take in. I thought the kid had been fooled by him, but it looks like I was seriously mistaken. If it's just Veldora, then it's possible that he's been tricked by him. However, it is impossible for that method to be effective against the cunning and sophisticated primordials. Understanding that, the plan must be amended. This demon lord's aura could show that there was something about demon lord Raimuru himself, and it would not be wrong to think of it that way. When you think about it, Veldora's growth has also been quite amazing. If it had been 300 years ago, Veldora would never have get Veelgrind hurt. However, He had become exceptionally good at fighting in only a short time from when the seal was lifted until now. The reason for Veldora's growth, which was far beyond her own expectations, was also due to the slime in front of her. I was going to go back to my home country one more time and make plans when my fatigue is gone. But there's no way around it. It feels like he'll be the bane of Rudra's existence if this slime isn't addressed here. Veilgrind made her decision. She took it upon herself to completely and utterly crush Rimuru. If we don't fix it now, the future is bound to be dangerous, that's Veilgrind's judgment. Although a lot of mana had been used up in the battle just now, she had recovered to a state of perfection after receiving the mana from Veldora. And for Veldora, even after that intense battle, the consumption was not much. In other words, Veilgrind wouldn't have any problems even if he fought at full strength next. Veilgrind leisurely shifts back into a fighting stance again. She discarded the idea that everything is just as it was supposed to be and thought she had won. It can be said that it was that kind of carelessness that led to the current situation. At that time, if Rimuru had been eliminated in the Dream Fortress, Rimuru would not have been able to summon the demons. In that case, the only question left is the final win against Guy. Thinking about it this way, the situation isn't great, but it's not the worst. The Empire still has a good chance of winning, and as long as there are no more mistakes, solving the enemy in front of us without problems should be possible. What happened next, however, was a bit of a bummer. Contrary to what Veilgrind had expected, there came only Rimuru alone over there. That's a win? If they all come at me, even I'll have to work on it. No matter how much Rimuru was worth guarding, it was impossible to lose as long as both herself and Veldora struck at the same time, or so Veilgrind thought. However, the battle has to be won and lost in one fell swoop. If the Demon Lord's men get in the way, there is a danger that the battle will be prolonged. That's why Veilgrind chose to go head-to-head a short time before something like that happened. She's the type who would follow her instinctive actions. Rudra. To Veldora, give the order to attack the Demon Lord Rimuru. Do you also feel the danger of that person as I do? That being the case, there's no need to hesitate. Veldora. In response to Veilgrind's request, Rudra unleashed the Kingship Unleashed. Rudra saw Rimuru as much of a danger as herself, which was a relief to Veilgrind. Since the Emperor was not careless, his own side would be sure to win. With two of the strongest true dragon seeds fighting against each other at the same time, it is unthinkable to lose. The terrible battle that is now about to begin. Rimuru darted towards the yo-yo-posed Veilgrind. And in front of Rimuru, Veldora snarled at the sky. The atmosphere shook with the roaring impact, and Veldora flew out. Veilgrind also followed him. Was he sure that he would be victorious? And after a roar, the opponent so directly began to attack for the elimination of Rimuru. As soon as Veldora came up, she gave her full strength, and the storm attack that even Veilgrind had suffered through, the roar of destruction, came at Rimuru. Notice. In anticipation of the storm's attack, we will unleash the absolute defense of the Covenant King with its ultimate power, neutralizing the wavelengths and rendering them ineffective. Contrary to the King of Wisdom who was ready to make an automatic defensive move, Rimuru suddenly issued a mandatory order. Idiot. Get out of the way. Although the King of Wisdom immediately obeyed this order, a part of the arithmetic realm was unable to understand Rimuru's intentions. The absolute defense that is proposed and then counterattack is the most appropriate answer among the various modes of action. However, Master Rimuru denied this, which made the King of Wisdom somewhat shaken. Although only a very small part of the field of arithmetic had a reaction, the King of Wisdom did produce chaos. Rimuru had also ignored the King of Wisdom many times before, but this time it was completely different. It was also because the King of Wisdom had fought with Rimuru for a long time, which led to such feelings. In the final analysis, as a skill or part of the laws of the world, it is unusual in itself to be able to feel like this, but the people involved are not aware of this fact. The roar of destruction swept past Rimuru, who had forced an evasive move. Immediately afterwards, the absolute defense that had normally been protecting Rimuru was penetrated, and a large explosion occurred at the place where Rimuru was just now, and the destructive power of the roar of destruction raged there. If the evasive action was one step slower, Rimuru's damage would have been inevitable. Witnessing this, the King of Wisdom's level of confusion rose again. Failure of calculation? No surprises? It cannot be understood that. Why did Rimuru get it? The calculations turned out to be perfect, without any mistakes. That being the case, the King of Wisdom began to retrieve information with the thought that he had missed a certain condition. However, even if one can easily outperform the speed of quantum computers, the reason is still unknown. Gone with the wind. It should be 100% defensible according to projections. The King of Wisdom couldn't help but say what he didn't have to say. It's hard to believe that the King of Wisdom is trying to justify it. A distinct skill's actually defending itself, something that would have been an impossibility, without anyone noticing it. It's still a battle and not an occasion for leisurely validation. The King of Wisdom in chaos was rebuked by Rimuru. Now is not the time to be dumb. Veldora has the King of Investigation. As I recall, there's something called probability manipulation or something like that, right? Hearing Rimuru say that, the King of Wisdom came to its senses. Yes, that's right. Why, it forgot something so important. It was strange, just then, the King of Wisdom felt something unusual. It can only be assumed that it has been interfered with by someone, but the exact reason remains unknown. It was not right to pass this on to Rimuru. The King of Wisdom hesitated. It can't find the reason, and out of pride, the King of Wisdom really didn't want to admit it. But if the status quo continues, the likelihood of damage to Rimuru is high. He should be told that the calculations turned out like this. But, to be branded as useless by Rimuru is to lose the meaning of existence as the Wisdom King Raphael. The mere consideration of these issues alone constitutes a betrayal of the Master. The skill is surprisingly hesitant, a situation that is absolutely not allowed to exist. Just as the King of Wisdom was plunged into violent confusion, the words of Rimuru came. Veldora has always been so exaggerated, even if it overrides your perfect calculations, it's not incredible. More than that, don't falter at the slightest defeat. Predictions don't work for Veldora, but you don't need to worry about that. Don't think too much and believe in yourself. I'll be Veldora's opponent, you take on Vielgrind. It was enough to know that, said Rimuru. For Raphael the King of Wisdom, who is just a skill, it's really like he's treating it as his own partner. Please. Opposite of us is two people, but so are you and I. It's up to you to choke Vielgrind, and I'll find a chance to free Veldora. So, you're going to hang in there anyway. Please, partner. These words soothed the confused and panicked thoughts of the King of Wisdom. Being relied upon? Even if you just made a mistake? Raphael the King of Wisdom had just done wrong, but Rimuru still trusted it. The Master, who still needs what should be nothing more than an actor's self. The unease is gone. The King of Wisdom, who had found its usual confidence, responded. Understood. I see. From now on, we'll move on to the individual named Vielgrind. Yes, that's it. Rimuru, he is the beloved master of Raphael the King of Wisdom and is never a small being that can be imprisoned by the uncertainty of probability, so just take heart and trust him to follow his actions. At this point, Rimuru threw out a sentence as if it were nothing. And by the way, I haven't officially named you. I used to call you Master Raphael the King of Wisdom, partner, or whatever. It's a little bit weird at a time like this, but I'll just officially give you a name. The King of Wisdom found it incomprehensible. The King of Wisdom felt full of wonder. That is, confused. That is, rejoice. That is, the expression of feelings. These unaccountable uncertainties that emerge make it impossible for the King of Wisdom to hide its own overwhelming. What was the Master saying? The King of Wisdom was in a state of confusion, but at the same time, also comprehended Raimuru's intentions. With Veldora taken away, Rimuru should have grieved more than anyone else, but even in these circumstances, he was still looking out for others. Rimuru, that's who it is. Let's see. How about Seal? You've always taught me so much, so let's just call you Seal. How is it? It may not be satisfying, but just bear with it. If you have an opinion, go take it out on that red dragon. Note, the Japanese word or oshieru means to teach. Shortening this to 3 syllables is shiru, which can be read quickly as Seal. This is from the web novel version of the translation, which is relatively high in recognition. As if to hide his shyness, Rimuru said so. Wisdom King Raphael, no, Seal experienced a fullness of emotion that a skill would not have otherwise felt. I am now, in eternal bliss. Yes, indeed thinking. Meanwhile, the time of evolution has come. This is the moment when Manus, Seal was born from the ultimate power, the King of Wisdom. I am Manus, Seal. I am the Theosophy nucleus, the unifier of abilities. With the soul of Lord Rimuru, the secondary executor of the Master. I'll be looking out for you forever, Lord Rimuru. Seal thought so. There's nothing to be afraid of anymore. In a situation that should be considered a crisis, it does not feel dangerous. Oh, I'm the one? How do you like that? Just hearing that from Rimuru alone, Seal was overcome with happiness. Then show your strength. To be ordered by Rimuru was the highest reward for Seal. As you wish, Lord Rimuru. Wisdom King Raphael awakens and becomes Seal. Then in order to fulfill Rimuru's wish, its power began to blossom even further. At Rimuru's command, the King of Wisdom, no, it was Seal now, launched a meet and greet operation against Veelgrind. Veelgrind's searing spit was approaching, easily defended by the absolute defense of the Covenant King Uriel. Veelgrind, who had witnessed the scene, was dumbfounded by the exaggeration of the situation. Rightfully so, Veelgrind had no mercy on Rimuru. The scorching breath had already been strengthened by the King of Charity, and it was impossible to defend against it with a mere barrier. As a matter of fact, as long as it wasn't possible to perfectly see through Veelgrind's attack and the level was higher than her existence, then the blow was bound to cost the enemy something, but there wasn't even a sign of fatigue on Rimuru. Even the Testarossa trio, the Primordials, could not have done such a thing as receiving a Veelgrind blow in dragon form without injury. Since it was possible to do such a thing with a blank face, it meant that an attack that wasn't thorough enough wouldn't work against the demon lord named Rimuru. Even though she was very unhappy about it, Veelgrind was still thinking calmly. In terms of the amount of mana, Veelgrind prevails, so it's possible that the loss is in the nature of the ability. Or rather, Demon Lord Rimuru possesses complete resistance for heat attacks. More than annoyed, Veelgrind chose to keep trying. It's like dealing with Veldora, creating incomplete bodies and then shooting out 11 rays of light. Nuclear strike magic, the thermal beam cannon. On top of this, 11 heads also emitted scorching spit at the same time. These 22 heat rays make up a multi-segmented attack that contains heat that even asteroids can easily vaporize. If one eats this move and is still unscathed, it is tantamount to proving that the heat attack is indeed ineffective against Rimuru. As a result, even Veelgrind had to admit it. The heat rays, which intersected as if the escape route were all blocked, were finally collected on Rimuru. Then, all were bounced off by the unfurled shield of light from Rimuru. Geez, what a bummer. It's almost like it's all calculated, perfectly defended with minimal movement. Very unpleasant, Veelgrind indignantly said. Even if the heat attack was ineffective against Rimuru, the attack just now was almost meaningless and inexcusable. Even if it was more or less somewhat depleted, as long as there was an absolute difference in the amount of mana, Veelgrind's victory would remain unassailable. The status quo, however, was that Rimuru's energy consumption rate was close to zero. In that case, the delay would end with Veelgrind falling into exhaustion first. Figuring that out, Veelgrind decided to make the most of it, and now there was another fact that made her unhappy. Rimuru just glanced at Veelgrind at first, then stopped looking this way. He concentrated on Veldora and treated Veelgrind as if he didn't give a damn. Instead of using a shield during the battle with Veldora, Rimuru chose to dodge all attacks. Only when there is nothing else to do, an attack of the same nature will be used to counteract Veldora's moves, but when faced with Veelgrind's attacks, that shield of light will just be used. Even though magic sense is able to perceive all around itself, this attitude is obvious. In a sense, this amounts to declaring that Veelgrind is not a threat at all. Such an approach offended Veelgrind's scales. "I'll make you regret underestimating me." The tall and arrogant Veelgrind decided to make the most powerful attack on her hands. Veelgrind condensed a large magic power while looking at Rimuru, who was ignoring her, with a hateful look. She then applied this magic to her body. The support of the King of Charity and the speeding up power as a symbol of her heat start the two side by side for their own words. This allows for a forced increase in calories, i.e., exercise capacity. In this way, it became possible for Veelgrind to move at thousands of times the speed of sound, that is, at speeds close to the fastest in the physical world. So what if the creature of power's action is someone other than Veelgrind? Although Veelgrind, who was both a spiritual being and possessed of physical endurance, could increase her motion energy without any problem, could the others withstand such acceleration? The answer is no. Forced continuous acceleration would be too much for any living body's flesh to bear. Even spiritual lifeforms were the same, and even intelligence was converted to energy, which sooner or later would lead to a thermal collapse. And that's exactly what Veelgrind's die. Not a shred of meat left for you to crumble away. The Scorched Dragon accelerated up. The strongest attack that even the Scorching Embrace can't surpass. In the Scorched Dragon accelerated read, Veelgrind poured out her full power. It was created in response to the day of the showdown that would come one day, and it was a hidden stunt to use against Velzado. It would have been too much of a waste to use this move on the local demon lord, but the furious Veelgrind couldn't care about that anymore. With the roar of the true Scorched Dragon, the wave of destruction was liberated towards Rimuru. The ultimate blow unleashed by the Scorched Dragon is just as powerful as the highest speed Veelgrind's restraint, capable of instantly collapsing any substance. The enemy would be buried by a speed that no one could evade. If it was Rimuru, who was concentrating on Veldora, it would be too late by the time he realized it. No, Rimuru should have been wiped out of the world without even having time to understand what was going on. I'd like to make him regret insulting me, but I don't have time for that, so that's the only thing I regret. With that kind of absolute confidence, Veelgrind began to confirm the outcome of the attack. Upon seeing Rimuru standing there unharmed, Veelgrind was completely stunned. How? It couldn't be. Veelgrind even suspected something was wrong with her eyes. An absolute hit that can't be evaded, one that can take it down without injury, should not exist. Even the Demon Lord, Guy Crimson, or her sister, the White Ice Dragon, Velzado, this blow was secretly powerful enough to bring them down. Veelgrind originally thought so. Unharmed? That's not possible. This is capable of affecting any of the barriers or defense system abilities. My Scorched Dragon accelerated read. What did you do? Veelgrind agitated. It's fine if it's counteracted by some means, but it's absolutely impossible to invalidate it with something like the barrier. This fact, which Veelgrind couldn't understand, made her lose her cool. Rimuru opened his mouth and answered. That move is indeed dangerous, but a straightforward attack like that would be easy to eat? In fact, the response to Veelgrind was all seal, and by reaching the perfect realm of reckoning, seal induced the opponent's attack pattern. For seal, Rymaru's business came first before anything else. In order to keep Veilgrind out of Rymaru's way, Seal completely blocked her as ordered. The nature of power is analyzed, and effective response strategies are selected and implemented. The shield of light that has special effects on Veilgrind's powers is one of them. The present Seal, aptly known as the unifier of abilities, had placed all of Rymaru's ultimate skills at his disposal. What Seal had just done was to unleash the king of gluttony for predation. After instantly understanding the nature of Veilgrind's scorched dragon accelerated excitation, in order to isolate the effects caused by this move, Seal had isolated it into the stomach pouch, which had now evolved into infinite space. The attack just now was indeed enough to eliminate Rymaru. It is impossible to defend against it by ordinary means, and even with the King of Wisdom's calculating power, it would be impossible to cope with it. Seal, however, was different. The difference between an evolved Seal and the King of Wisdom was not in one dimension. No matter what kind of enemy attack it is no longer a problem as long as it sees through its essence correctly. As if to prove it, Seal used the King of Gluttony perfectly. First, isolate it like this, and then slowly absorb the energy from the infinite space. In this way, the void space of the King of Gluttony became a means of defense beyond even the absolute defense of the King of Covenant. It's no wonder Veilgrind was so surprised. Even Rymaru himself, the defense was complete before he had a chance to think about how dangerous that move was. It was only in order to keep Veilgrind from sensing this that he responded to the other in that provocative-like tone. Seal's strategy didn't end there, starting to match Rymaru with a smooth rhythm that hadn't existed before, ready to turn the conversation into a weapon and push Veilgrind even further into extinction. What does Veilgrind think? You gotta be kidding me. You said you ate it? My strongest move, the Scorched Dragon acceleration? Just like that, because she couldn't understand Rymaru's words, she was still fighting, but she was at a loss. Although it was only for a moment, it was also a fatal lapse. The arrogant attack was dumbfounded, and I'm sorry when you were hit hard. But you're not going to forget that we're still in a fight, are you? It was too late when asked such a question by Rymaru. There was no hesitation for Seal to act, and Rymaru endorsed its full action. The measurement of the amount of Veilgrind's mana has been completed, and after considering its nature and power characteristics, it is judged that it is possible to seal it for a period of several hundred seconds with Heat Break Prison. Now start. Without Veilgrind noticing, the cascading spell formation was complete. It was a combination of the infinite prison of the Covenant King Uriel and the hot space, a synthetic ability that Seal had just devised to deal with Veilgrind. Veilgrind was imprisoned. All the elements of this combat airspace had been grasped by Seal's arithmetic perception. The temperature, the humidity, the gravity, the flow of the wind, the sunlight, the heartbeat of life, all of these phenomena are nothing more than a dance in the hands of the Seal. Therefore, no matter what Veilgrind does again, it is no longer possible to disengage from this airspace. Seeing the glow of the Heat Break Prison that had been unleashed after Seal's declaration made Veilgrind feel a wave of dizziness. I can't believe it, it's that simple. The humiliation of being posed by Rymaru made the true red dragon's body tremble. However, no matter how much Veilgrind struggled, the Heat Break Prison remained unmoved. Just be honest for a while. When Veldora is liberated, I'll play with you. These words proclaimed the defeat of Veilgrind. I admit I lost this time. But I still have the parallel existence, and I can't stop it as long as I have the Soul Corridor, the Heat Break Prison. There was still one more move available to Veilgrind. She just had to give up her current body, but she could transfer most of her own energy back to the other body that had remained with Rudra as insurance. So it wasn't over yet, and Veilgrind, while enduring the full humiliation, began to move cautiously. It must not be noticed by Rymaru, it must be done slowly. Through the Soul Corridor, Veilgrind transfers a little bit of hair magic away. Totally unaware that this was exactly what Seal wanted as a result. It was once the King of Wisdom. Alas, it is Seal now. Since I didn't seem to be in good shape, I tried to come up with a name on a whim, and it seemed happier than I expected. After all, Seal's response was no longer the mechanical one it had been hitherto, but rather a smooth response, and the tone became very human-like. I also feel that Seal has become strong to the point of terror. Just now it was as if it had never existed, and now Seal was in excellent shape. It had also gone into automatic combat several times before, but the use of skills back then was completely incomparable to the current Seal. Even Veilgrind, who I felt possessed an overwhelming threat, was no match for Seal at all. First inducing Veilgrind to launch a must-kill move, then aiming for the moment when the amount of mana decreases after her big move, the battle Seal has designed is simply perfect. It's easy to put words in my mouth by combining the abilities I possess to form an effect that can deal with Veilgrind's traits, but the exact degree of arithmetic required to make such a thing possible is completely beyond me. Most importantly, I lost to Veilgrind in the amount of mana. In other words, in order to block the enemies above me at this level of strength, Seal efficiently used her advantageous attributes to build a targeted heat-break prison. In other words, she flexes her skills according to her opponent's situation, and this kind of random strain can be called something like an algorithm-bound prison. It was because of being able to achieve such a thing that Seal was able to achieve complete victory against Veilgrind. The key to this battle lies in being able to withstand the attacks of Veilgrind. As much as I believe in Seal's calculations, if I take one wrong step, I'll be the one who's finished. Why do I trust Seal so much? It's simple, because I've already said I'm here to be Veldora's opponent, and Veilgrind is to be left to Seal to settle, and I think Seal can definitely do it. And then, Seal also responded to my expectations perfectly, no, above and beyond. Using a variety of abilities more deftly than myself, the task was accomplished brilliantly. As my partner, I'm more impressed with Marnus, Seal than I used to be. The unexpected miscalculation made Seal reliable, but I didn't forget my original purpose. I have to free Veldora as soon as possible before Veilgrind can act again. Speaking of which, how many seconds does that thing seal Veilgrind's moves? Even if Veilgrind struggles any longer, there are still 200 seconds left in the duration of the heat-break prison. Therefore, that worry is unwarranted. So, what did you say? While the mere gain of 200 seconds was enough to be appreciated, Veilgrind was still a threat. So I can't just ignore her. No. As expected, Veilgrind turned to evasive action. Now that she understands that she can transfer her energy through the soul corridor, I think she'll try to transfer it instead of sticking to this other body. Hey. Since any other body could be called the main body, there was no need to forcefully destroy the heat-break prison. No, that's not it. Seal saw through that, and deliberately prepared a retreat for Veilgrind. That's right, Veilgrind's trump card shows too much. Veilgrind has not only shown us parallel existence as if it were a show of bragging rights, but has also fought with the Demoness Trio and Veldora. All of these situations. Under Seal's watch, the analysis material is also very complete. The fact that Veilgrind has the power of parallel existence does not mean that she can endlessly create other bodies. That's why the Seal went to measure the amount of magic element in Veilgrind, and managed to remit the total value. In this way, one can understand how many other bodies one needs to knock down afterwards. But Seal took advantage of that in turn. She had seen through Veilgrind's insurance technique and had induced the other to use that method to escape. After all, with the power of convenience, I would use it as a means of insurance. However, my separate body can't reproduce the ultimate skill, so it's really not the same as other body. Although I was a little upset, I had to admit that I was not as skilled as others. In the end, the seemingly omnipotent parallel existence can only be used as a bait or against an opponent that is inferior to itself. Well, it's still super useful as insurance, and depending on the opponent's situation, it can also be a big battle force. Several methods can be thought of for effective use, but none feel very effective against opponents who are on the same level as or above themselves. Seal has exposed this weakness. That said, the algorithm is already a bit intimidating. All makes one wonder if future predictions were made, all exactly as Seal had expected. To this extent I can only be stunned, but Seal is my partner. Better to stop worrying about the excess and get the point across. For Seal, even the strongest dragon race like Veilgrind can be played with. Well, I can't lose then, I know. But just to be on the safe side, in order to get things done for the next 200 seconds, let's go all out on Veldora from now on. Come help me, Seal. As you wish. No, Seal and I looked directly at the original target, Veldora. Seal bought valuable time. Though short, it is the equivalent of infinity for us. If we can't use this time effectively, then it's a shame on us. It's not about being able to do it, it's about doing it. With this realization, I began to approach Veldora again. It is no longer for such negative reasons as Guy's commissioning that Veldora be liberated and Rudra defeated as soon as possible, but for my own desire to do so. Being surprised by Seal's birth made me change back to my usual self, who had long since regained my composure. But that doesn't mean my anger is gone. This anger was saved for the Emperor Rudra. I have other priorities to achieve. That being said, speaking of Veldora's progress, all I wanted to do was keep yelling at Veldora. To dominate Veldora is a simple matter, but it would take an equal amount of labor to get an energy as great as the true dragon race to do its bidding. In the final analysis, even if it is possible to make spiritual beings obey, it is extremely difficult to take away their free will. There are several ways I can think of to dominate. Let yourself be submissive, charmed by the domination of the heart, the taking away of free will to force the other party to submit, to force domination. Complete domination without even realizing it in person. And so on. According to my analysis, for Yuki it is complete domination, for Kigali it should be forced domination, and then for Veldora, also forced domination. Coercive domination is phased. The stage where free will is left, the stage where it will resist but obey reluctantly, the stage where free will is completely erased and becomes like a robot that won't disobey any orders, etc. Kigali looked like she no longer had free will, but what about Veldora? The spiritual lifeforms are like collections of strong wills, so I don't think the free will of such an existence can be simply erased. Then it should make sense for me to constantly shout at each other. That said, Veldora resisted too fiercely too, didn't he? Although he was ordered to rule out the enemy, me, he really had no qualms about throwing all kinds of vicious attacks at them. Even if Veilgrind had been handed over to the Seal, dealing with Veldora alone would have been hard enough for me. I also have the storm system powers on hand, so trying to counteract Veldora's attacks is possible. However, just counteracting that kind of attack with unusual power. I'll have to do my best, I can't keep up with the shouting anymore. For these reasons, I now leave the defense in the hands of the Seal. Although the probability operation is still very difficult, I'm sure the current Seal will be able to handle it. From now on it's showtime. I take this thought with me and try to approach Veldora. The storm crossed and flew towards me. However, where I am is as calm as the eye of a typhoon. What can I say? It gives me a strong sense of peace of mind. Completely devoid of the feeling of needing to fight to the death when I went in alone, Veldora's attacks were easily offset. There was also little to no consumption of the magicules. And, right now I'm in amazingly good shape. This is, of course, the food chain of the Master's demons which have been delivered through the Soul Corridor. Is that right? Is that right? Although just now I could feel the power flowing out from the source, it seems that with the blessings of my companions, I was able to fight even Veldora. That being the case, it's even less likely to fail. I finally arrived in front of Veldora. I'll say hello to him first. Kept you waiting, Veldora. Do you recognize me? No answer. He growled and flew over. Because I felt the fire, I couldn't help but punch him in the face. Yet to say the obvious, and rightfully so, this punch is completely useless against Veldora's massive body. It might have been a different story if it wasn't just strength, but even magic was poured into the fist, but even that wouldn't have caused much damage. However, this will do. Since the goal is to get Veldora to come to his senses, I'll stop hesitating to let the beat down. I went all out and kept beating Veldora in the face. Get close to that, and most of Veldora's attacks become out of range. Or so close that if he attacked, he would suffer along with it. However, because of being manipulated, one might not care enough to knock the magic over, but then Seal would step in to deal with it, right? Beatings, and the occasional kick. However, Veldora still just growled. How about sealing Veldora into the infinite space through predation? Seal makes such a terrible suggestion. To ask to do it or not to do it, of course the answer is yes, but can that kind of thing really be done? No problem. The King of Gluttony has been placed under my command and will be executed as soon as you give the order. Such an answer should be, well, that's pretty reliable. After the slime's inherent skill, predation, has evolved infinitely, he will become the King of Gluttony. This was supposed to be the power with which I had the most affinity and the most manipulation. So after being most adapted by the seal, it worked for Veldora, too. In addition, this King of Gluttony can be unleashed from anywhere in my magic sticky spirit body. How about not even having to come into contact with a predatory creature? As long as it can be confirmed visually, it is possible to exert influence on the space where the target is located. Since the closer you get the more powerful it is, you should expect great results now that I'm already in close proximity to Veldora. Anyway, it's decided. It's so disturbing, Veldora. Don't let me worry. With a loud yell, I unleashed the King of Gluttony without hesitation to try and devour Veldora completely. Right now. Kwahahaha. A slight failure. Forgive me. I heard voices that would otherwise have been impossible to hear. Veldora, is that you? That's me. Your friend, the Storm Dragon, Veldora, yes. It shouldn't be a trap, after all, it's a dumbfounding response. The owner of this rootless voice couldn't belong to anything else but Veldora. Hey, are you still conscious? In fact, I hastily separated my heart core at that time. So after that it was impossible to have a conversation, but it did preserve the ego. I see. Though unable to make a sound, consciousness remained. Now it's probably because my King of Gluttony started devouring Veldora's body that it's possible to chant with the core. Anyway, present Veldora is better than nothing. But in that way, it's a firestorm in another sense. What? If that's the case, you'd better take your body back. It's so worrying, and you're still chatting so leisurely. I don't want to think about the panic I felt because of Veldora, just thinking about it makes me want to complain about him. If I could have done it, I would have done it. And by the way, Rimuru, shouldn't you be acting more calmly and carefully? You have no right to say that, not to mention. You idiot. I couldn't have succeeded it if I kept my cool and acted so exaggeratedly recklessly as the opponent of two dragon species at the same time. This kind of thing doesn't even have to be pointed out specifically. After I calmed down, even I felt really bad that I was still safe after all this messing around. But it would have been impossible for me to act prudently at that time. Moreover, from the moment I dared to use the true dragon seed as a rival, the word prudence was no longer relevant to me. Just as I was pondering these things, Veldora, full of advice, came in. Oh, look out. I'm gonna let out the black lightning. Don't say things like that in a chatty tone. Moreover, the last thing he released was not black lightning, but the wind of death.
Although it's okay to evade it no matter which seal is able to offset it, but this is still a setup for me no matter how it looks, right?
You. What lightning? Isn't this the wind of death that kills souls? I grumbled furiously, but Veldora just smiled and defended himself. Kwahaha. Sorry, kwahaha. It seems that I am still far from being able to grasp my body's movements. I'm aware of the timing of the skill, but I'm sure it's only a 50 to 50 chance. In other words, it's impossible to use it for reference. And since the enemy has a probability operation, it's better to ignore Veldora's predictions. Got it. That's enough, you just shut up. If I fail because I believe what you say at such an important time, isn't it true that you can't laugh? Hearing me say things like I'm disappointed in you, Veldora went to the point of starting to panic. Wait, Rimuru. I'll try. I'll help you out somehow. Despite Veldora's desperate assurances, this statement has no basis whatsoever. It is not time to get emotional, but to prioritize reason. Besides, I've been assisted by Veldora. Just being able to hear his voice calmed my mood. You're safe, that's enough. After I asked again if he was all right, Veldora burst out laughing as usual. Kwa ha ha ha.
Of course I'm okay.
I am the strongest dragon. It's a relief to hear that. Just as I was thinking this. It was not Rudra who cut off the soul corridor, but me. So, I didn't actually lose to them. What? This guy, what was just said? What's going on? It's nothing, it's simple. It was Kondo, right? Rudra took advantage of the brokenness revealed when my consciousness turned to the man's attack to dominate me. The fact that 3 people, including my sister, actually joined forces is just as nasty. I'm outraged. But at least the worst of it was avoided, that is, I did it after a bitter decision. As the strongest dragon, aren't you being a little careless? What more is there to talk about on the battlefield, dirty and clean? What are you trying to do? Really, what the hell are you guys up to? Don't be careless, isn't that what I always tell you? Kwa ha ha ha. I didn't expect to be lectured in such a situation. It seemed like a happy Veldora all the way through, and I really had to be completely dumbfounded. I always feel like a complete idiot. Let's advance the topic first. So, the so-called decision to cut off the soul corridor. Well, that's exactly what happened. Because Rudra's domination isn't just mine. It's probably yours through the soul corridor. And that's why Veldora was in a hurry to cut off the soul corridor, that is, to protect me. After hearing that, I couldn't get mad at Veldora anymore. Well, then, I'll take care of the rest. I don't worry about anything, because I believe in you. Well, it's kinda nice to be relied on. Ah, yes. I'll set you free right now, and you'll be waiting. Kwa ha ha ha. Truly reliable. My friend, I believe you can do it. The situation of Veldora is clear. Although the dominion of the body was taken away, the nucleus of his heart was safe and sound. The current Veldora doesn't seem to be able to take back the reins, so it's up to me to figure it out. No problem. Since the nucleus of the heart is fine, then there should always be a way. Yes, for example. Seal, with the core of Veldora, you can bring him back to life with the ultimate skill, the King of the Storm, right? No problem. The information of the power remains, and the recovery of the Storm King will be possible as long as there is a connection between the soul corridor and the core of Veldora. The problem was easily solved. To put it simply, I'll just devour the Veldora in front of me and then recycle his core. The rest is just going to be implemented. It's really simple. So, now to beat the opponent. Take down the strongest opponent, the Storm Dragon Veldora. I found a way to solve the problem. In that case, let's get this over with quickly. There are 2 problems. Time constraints on where the nucleus of the heart is. There's plenty of time left. The session just now was also all conducted during the thinking acceleration delay, which actually lasted less than a few seconds, and despite being devoured, they were actually still attacking each other, but there was still more than 3 minutes left. The problem is the location of the nucleus of the heart. It should be in the body, so it is possible to do chanting through magical elements. However, locking down the exact location where the nucleus of the heart is located can be difficult. If the core is broken, it will be all over. The battle will be lost, and Veldora would have to be reborn. In fact, it's usually the other way around. The nucleus of the heart belongs to the part that's hard to hurt. This is because the nucleus of the heart that will be targeted is usually the most heavily defended thing. However, right now, Veldora's nucleus is in a state of isolation from the body, equivalent to being defenseless. If you think you can't hit it even if you want to, but you have a fluke, if you accidentally hit it straight, you'll break the nucleus of the heart, and then you won't be able to laugh. Even if he is freed from Rudra's domination, Veldora's current personality will be gone and the soul corridor between him and me will not come back to life. Only this situation must be absolutely avoided in any case. If I could devour Veldora all in one gulp, there would be no need to worry about such things. However, unfortunately, even my imaginary space could not swallow him whole without the consent of the storm dragon. Veldora had to be weakened first, to reduce his mana to a certain level, or to prey little by little. Also, at the same time, I must be careful not to hurt his core. Think of it this way, first of all to rule out practices that would hurt Veldora. Let's just say, I feel a bit scared now that I think about the beating I gave out just now. Originally, it would have been difficult to inflict damage on Veldora, let alone knockout. It's hard to imagine him being so vulnerable. In the past, one or two of his spells wouldn't even leave a scratch, and punches and kicks would mean nothing to him. He can only be dealt decent damage if various attacks have the effect of the ultimate skill attached to them. Even the strongest divine magic, Ancestor Collapse, could only do a small amount of damage to Veldora's huge body. The dragon species is known as the strongest and its defensive power is really high. That's why I thought that even with a little bit of aggression, Veldora would be fine, but it turns out that everything is a given. Especially now, Veldora is in a state of march of no will of his own. So there's no telling what he'll do, and that's the sad thing about being dominated. As long as I don't know where Veldora's core nucleus is, I'd rather not attack him actively. That being the case, there's only one way. The effort to prey on him a little bit, while trying to find out where the nucleus of the heart is. It's a race against time, but it can only be done. With only 3 minutes to go, optimism is 3 minutes to go. I tried not to care about the rest of the time, and unleashed the full force of Gluttony King Beelzebub to devour Veldora. My body changed from human form to slime form. The description of infinitesimal is more descriptive of the nature of the viscous body than of the flow form. Following my intent to carry out predation aggressively, Seal changed my form to the most suitable shape. This is probably the way you can reach a larger area and hunt more efficiently. The ever-changing body of mine, like a tangle, eroded the surface of Veldora's body. This time, however, the target was too big. My body, no matter how it stretched, seemed a mere blip to Veldora. It's a really discouraging assignment, but not one to give up. I ignored those things and further accelerated the offensive erosion. At the same time, the ability was launched to search for the core of Veldora heart. This is also something that cannot be done without Seal's assistance, and it occurred to me from the moment I saw the abnormally powerful Seal that nothing might be able to compete with it in terms of calculating power. The case of evolving just by getting a name doesn't seem to be limited to magical creatures. Well, things are going well, but not without hindrance. Now I am in severe pain. Veldora's being began to resist the hostile presence that was eroding it. The storm dragon's dragon spirit aura is causing my body to collapse little by little. As opposed to me, who wanted to devour myself, the storm dragon also wanted to destroy me, and so began the fierce attack and defense. It hurts, it's hot, it's unbearable. I should have felt no pain, but the pain went through my body. The heat was supposed to mean nothing to me, but now I felt like I was about to melt in the unbearable heat. And then there is the bitterness that you first feel when you come into this world. The sense of danger, as if my existence itself was going to disappear, stimulated my survival instincts. However, I still haven't slowed the erosion. I want to win. To break this misery, to save Veldora. Besides, I'm not alone right now. With Seal as a reliable partner, I'm going to devour the storm dragon and find Veldora's core from it. This level of suffering is nothing at all as long as it is accomplished.
Seal, is that okay?
Leave it to me. No problem. After getting a solid answer, I expanded the erosion further. What's holding me back is the energy that's swallowed up. Normally this energy would be restored to my power, but it's not the same when the opponent is a true dragon, let alone my power, and this energy even begins to destroy my body. The dragon's factor is so powerful that it's presumably not bound to anyone. But the fact that the result was actually domination by the emperor is a headache, but now is not the time to complain. Whenever a part of one's body is annihilated, infinite regeneration creates a new body again. That is, by this practice, the energy that is eaten is forcibly absorbed away. Granted, it's simpler to just throw that energy away, but that's not going to work. If you don't analyze it properly with the analytical identification, there is a risk of harming the core of Veldora's heart. It doesn't get any more troublesome than that, but it's still the best thing to do. This was the conclusion reached in consultation with Seal, and all that remained was to repeat the whole operation. I gave up thinking to continue with my homework. Time is running out and the object is too big. An uneasiness arose in the mind as to whether it would be possible to make it in time, but I trusted Seal. It must be possible to make it in time. I have a few other parsing assignments I've been doing as I'm busy. Do you want to hear them? I mean, what the hell is it with you? What are you doing while I endure the pain? What is being done is an analytic identification of the power of Vielgrind. I studied the Scorched Dragon's accelerated excitation, which was isolated in the infinite space, and mastered the laws of it. No, that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking, to master it. Although the reproduction of power has failed, it is possible to develop similar skills. That's too much of a stretch, Seal. It seems better to think of it as her being able to read the content of my superficial mental activity at any time. In the future, it's better to focus your consciousness on the psychological defense walls before thinking about issues in the deep psychological realm. Having said that, it's not a bad thing to be able to imitate Vielgrind's must-kill technique. It's impossible to reproduce the ultimate skill just by looking at it. No, wait. What else has been analyzed? I became a little afraid to ask, but I asked straight out. What else has been analyzed? Seal started to answer as if she had waited a long time for me to ask this. Yes. The parsing of the Roar of Destruction is also over. After that, it's possible to use some of the leftover King of the Storm to create this skill. Wait. Isn't this the big report that will blow away all the pain I'm feeling right now? The kind of analysis that felt super difficult just to listen to, and was actually done in the blink of an eye, that's just too incredible. No, it's true. And then it doesn't really matter, it's just a matter of starting now. The involuntary superficial psychological feeling is immediately reciprocated, but, never mind. There's no point in hiding it anyway. Think about it for a moment and you'll be relieved. The research power of the Storm King does remain with me. If you use this skill, it's not incredible to recreate the Roar of Destruction. It's an awesome thing to be able to use a power skill, and I'm honestly kinda happy about it. Though taken aback, since it was Seal who felt nothing was incredible anymore. Thinking about it that way, the one thing that even Seal thought was important, it was very concerning. What's the point? The analysis of the Storm Dragon through Predator has been successfully completed. From now on, it has become possible to transform Lord Raimuru's body into the same as the true dragon race. Should it be implemented? What? Just now, did you throw out such a dangerous statement as an understatement? To transform my body composition into the same species as Veldora? Should it be implemented? It's over. I've lost all understanding. If my own understanding is correct, doesn't that mean I can become a true dragon race? This perception is right. Huh? And say correctly, I said you. Really, it can be done? Of course. So, evolve into a true dragon race? Yes/no ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. I couldn't help but come in for 3 laughs. At a time like this, I have to ask yes, no, and so on. I give orders while thinking about such boring things. Yes. In an instant, all the pain I felt was gone. Pain, heat, bitterness. The Storm Dragon's dragon spirit aura is no longer effective against my new body. If you ask why, it's because I can also use the dragon spirit fighting chi. That said, the current me just needs to keep eating energy to increase. The amount of my mana became more and more massive, increasing at such a rate that one was even concerned that if it continued, it would swell to the point of being uncontrollable enough to storm out. No problem. I will manage it perfectly. Also, with Seal around, there's no need to worry about that at all. After becoming a true dragon species, my amount of mana was finally comparable to that of Veldora. Then, the limit was pushed. Here I am, reborn as a new true dragon species. From the time this state of affairs was put on hold, there was a fatal delay in the response of the Storm Dragon body, allowing me to evolve into a dragon species. The Storm Dragon's delay in responding to this state of affairs was fatal. Success, Rimuru. It's surprising that you've become a true dragon race, but I was right about you all along, kwa ha 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 ha. Veldora boasted of victory, sounding as if he wasn't too surprised by the tone. You were bred by me. In spite of his tone, it goes without saying that the answer to the question of what Veldora had sent on this occasion was none. Also, it's too early to celebrate the victory. The exact location of the most critical core nucleus of Veldora's heart is unknown. That's why I started the last step. Come on, let's get this over with. It's unforgivable that you would call yourself my favorite storm dragon. Devour it all, the king of gluttony. In obedience to my command, the king of gluttony devoured the storm dragon. With a cheerful feeling. And, still, at an alarming rate. A completely different, completely one-way progression than it had been so far, the devourer and the devoured. It is almost like the factual reproduction of the law of the weak and the strong. The curtain came down quietly on the heroic battle. With the evolution of a creature and the birth of a being, a higher realm is reached. The dazzling glow of the energy residue that leaked out filled the surroundings. That is the light of blessing. Celebrating the birth of a new true dragon seed. My old body, which failed to transform into the dragon seed, emits light when it is transformed into pure energy. Even this residue, turned into grain, was absorbed by me and disappeared. And just like that, I accomplished my purpose in flawless form. After the light faded, only an unidentified lifeform remained there. Veldora disappeared. Eaten by the slime, the demon lord Rimuru, Veilgrind realizes this. According to the investigation, Rimuru was said to have been born from the magical deposits leaked from Veldora, but Rimuru devoured all of the storm dragon like his parents and transformed himself into the 5th true dragon race, ultimate slime, viscous dragonic demonic star god body. The slime, immediately after, began to take on a human form. A knife was held in his hand and he was not wearing any clothing. The age looks to be about 15 to 16 years old. A height of only 160 centimeters or so is not too much to describe as petite. However, the amount of mana contained within it rivals and even exceeds that of Veldora. The golden pupils seemed to see through everything, slender and beautiful. The silvery hair was laced with a hint of fresh water, giving off a moon-white glow. Without gender, the looks are better described as cute than beautiful. However, the divine atmosphere that wrapped around its body still elevated that appearance to the realm of beauty. The dazzling white skin was enveloped in a demonic aura mixed with black and gold. Rimuru seemed to mutter something in displeasure, and the demonic aura that covered his body changed into a pitch-black full-body suit that could give off a divine aura. It seems that the demon race is using the material creation that they are good at, to make the appearance of clothes for their physicalization. Even if it was just using the mana that leaked out of itself, the black clothes that were created were equipment whose strength was deep and bottomless. Rimuru took the next step to suppress his excess energy perfectly, then revealed a smile as if finally satisfied. Veilgrind witnessed it all while in captivity. From halfway through, the energy transfer stops. Unable to believe what was happening before her eyes, she sank into a daze. The battle between her brother, the Storm Dragon, and the Demon Lord should have been overwhelmingly in Veldora's favor, but it was absolutely impossible to be overwhelmed in return. If that were to happen, it would mean that both parties were in fact on the same level from the very beginning. By chance? Could it be that slime was really just born there by chance in Veldora? Veilgrind, plunged into the sea of thought, finally arrived at this startled answer. However, she could not easily admit such things. And that's par for the course. The magical creature that was born by chance to the true dragon seed happens to hold a soul that can adapt to the dragon factor. If the other party is really the fifth true dragon race, it can be called the existence of a brother. However, Rimuru had evolved into the dragon race by eating Veldora, and to call such a being a true dragon race was something Veilgrind could never agree with. If she may say so, it's something else very similar to the dragon race. Veilgrind would never identify with such an unpleasant existence, nor would she want to. He had to be wiped out while he was at it. Veilgrind's instincts were speaking thus. Also, one must avenge one's brother. Veldora, to Veilgrind, was a sweet little brother. Although Veldora was an arrogant and brash presence, very much a distracting one, his freedom was also envied. Though Veilgrind intends to use him as a pawn, that is an insignificant amount of years compared to the dragon's long lifespan. Veilgrind dispelled this thought even less so, thinking only of liberating her brother once it was over. It's supposed to be like this. Understanding, Veldora was swallowed up before her own eyes in a moment when Veilgrind's sanity was blown away with rage. How dare you, take my lovely brother? Veilgrind let out an angry snarl. 200 seconds had passed and the heat break prison shattered and dissipated. The Scorched Dragon, which has put aside her reasoning to protect herself, has shown hostility towards Rimuru. After eating Veldora, I seem to have been reborn into a new race. The name seems to be Ultimate Slime, Viscous Dragonic Demonic Star God Body, or something, so I'm joining the true dragon race. Although a subspecies, it's completely unrelated to a slime now, I guess, although there's that idea but it's a secret. Nowadays, you lose if you care. I confirm my new body. I can make a human body without consuming magicules, and it's gotten a lot bigger. Has it grown, so to speak? Nowadays I'm about the same height as a high schooler. Although it is girly. Since the age of appearance can change at will, it really doesn't make any sense, but it's fun to grow up with that feeling. The focus is on being able to move with ease. The volume of the slime form has also increased, with the diameter seemingly increasing from 70 to 80 centimeters. It's a little too big to be held in one's arms this way, but there should be a way to maintain the original smaller size. I'll check it out afterwards. There's a problem. Right now, I'm not wearing anything. In other words, I'm naked. That's a no-go. Although the strange demonic aura that leaked could hide my body, it still didn't look good in my ethical view. Because of this, the garments were tried on. I tried to use what Diablo taught me about the creation of matter, and it was unexpectedly simple and successful. Depending on the ability of the maker, what is made will perform differently. Plus this outfit is not only super comfortable to wear, but the pitch black look is cool too. As for the grade that makes people care, it's the mythical grade. Mythical? Mythical? So that's it, To be completely stunned is exactly how I feel right now. I feel like I've really evolved, I see. Mostly, my current strength is probably more than I could ever imagine. With some careful thought, several reasons can come to mind. One of the main reasons why was that when Benimaru and the others evolved into the awakened Demon Lord, their power would be returned to me in the form of a food chang feedback, right? Eating Veldora, absorbing his power was also a reason. The energy that had hitherto been stored in the stomach pouch that could not be used was now analyzed and could be used. There must be a reason for that. Because of these various reasons, my abilities have blossomed this time, which is roughly how I feel. It's the result of everything working smoothly. Simply put, it's all thanks to the seal. Oh, it's rude to call people by their first names now. As a tribute to your partner in the future, let's call you Seal Sensei. Please don't do this. It was like hearing something like that, but I didn't care at all. Really, my teacher is just brilliant. Please take care of us from now on. Leave it up to me. And so I got dressed, but the main purpose must not be forgotten. Veldora, are you all right? Kwa ha ha ha. Of course, don't make me repeat it so many times. More important than that, you're the one who managed to defeat my body.
It's okay.
Now that I think about it, I've just become a bit forgetful. But, great. I mean it. Veldora and I were happy for each other's peace. Being able to have a conversation like this, Veldora's core seems to be fine. In that case, all that was left was to reconnect the soul corridor and restore the ultimate power of the King of Storms. It's a success without a problem. As expected of Seal Sensei. Even when I don't ask, I often get things done ahead of time. The job was also done perfectly this time. Good. My purpose was served. Now that Veldora has been recaptured, there's no Imperial army left. But yes, my anger was still there and I was going to take it out hard on Emperor Rudra. Moreover, ending the war in such a tiger's head manner will leave a bane in its wake. Now that things have come to this, there is only so much we can do to crush our opponent completely. It is also the duty of being a king to take the threat out.
Now that my anger has subsided, then it's okay for someone other than Rudra to just throw it away, right?
It's starting to come to mind, but don't let up on getting the job done to the end. Besides, even if I were willing to give in, the enemy would not retreat in silence. The evidence is that Veilgrind in the front is still alive and is staring at me from the prison with a hostile look in her eyes. I had succeeded in liberating Veldora, but Veilgrind was furious for some reason. There was no point in beating her, and being her opponent was troublesome. But the threat must be removed. Veilgrind can no longer pose a threat. Although the analysis of all her powers is not yet complete, the countermeasures are ready. Seal Sensei is so confident, or rather, arrogant. No, it's 100% true. It would be ridiculous to lose the fight, but it really doesn't take that kind of worry. Even the fight just now, we had completely defended against Veilgrind's attack. The current seal had even estimated a not too hard fight. Anyway, I don't intend to change my policy of taking this opportunity to completely destroy the Empire, and to spill blood without shedding it. The Black Legion is also making a ruckus right now, with several particularly chaotic spots in the battlefield, but there's nothing left in the enemy lineup that requires my particular attention. I'm definitely going to clash with Veilgrind, who is targeting Rudra anyway, so weakening her here isn't a mistake in tactics either. There were Lieutenant Kondo and Damrada on the Imperial side. The 4 horsemen who guarded Rudra also seemed to be quite a tricky opponent. Yuki was also dominated by Rudra, so we had to deal with him as an enemy as well. In addition to these enemies, the single digits should be left to one person. I don't know what kind of guy he is, but since it's a saint-level opponent, one must also be on guard. In other words, even not counting Rudra and Veilgrind, there were still 8 strong enemies on the Imperial side. After exploring the center of the battlefield, it seems that there are several other strong men who can be considered threatening, so let's solve the problem with one breath now. In fact, I don't feel threatened at this point, even though I say I'm strong. Since evolving into the true dragon seed, my amount of mana has increased nearly tenfold. With this, the quality and quantity of my strength has been greatly strengthened, and I have a real feeling that my strength is not comparable to that of my previous self. Because I've yet to call out Veldora, my energy is also full frame. I'm in such good shape right now that I think I might be able to compete with Milim or Guy. No, that's a big deal. If one gets too carried away, it will surely lead to failure afterwards. It's better to act cautiously and deliberately for now. That said, after scouting the battlefield's breadth, I found that the strong men mentioned earlier seemed to have already fought with Benimaru and the others. Although that was my order in the beginning, it was still admirable that they moved so quickly, but at the same time, the fear of casualties arose. Will they obey my no-death order properly? I hope they don't force themselves to mess around just to keep me out of the way. Forget about it, I'll worry about it after all this. Now, I have another Veilgrind in front of me who is flying over. I'll take care of her first, then see if I have to go back them up. In less than a second, I made that judgment. That being the case, the next question was how to fight her. First of all, how about unleashing the dragon liberation from the King of Storms with the ultimate skill? Calling Veldora out, it became a 2-on-1 matchup between the two of us against Veilgrind, and in doing so, it was a sure win. Come to think of it, normally my mana amount is always in a disagreeable state. Mostly, this is because I let Veldora move freely.
Veldora and I are similarly one-minded and can be resurrected without problems as long as the other is okay.
Although it was different from Veilgrind's parallel existence, it was also a cheat-level invincibility trait. If the mana level not being full is the price of this trait, it feels about as good as no problem at all. Also, the excess mana from Veldora flows into me, so there's actually no inconvenience there. How about because of this loop-back effect, my body has even been activated? Anyway, that's how it is. Storm Dragon Liberation to me is the ability to do far more good than harm. It used to consume about 90% of my magicules, but now it's enough with 3 achievements. As I thought this, I prepared to unleash Storm Dragon Liberation. How dare you, take my lovely brother! Veilgrind yelled so loudly. If you ask me, that statement of hers feels like a backbite. You were the first to strike, weren't you? After all, isn't it because of you guys that I was going to fight Veldora? Shut up. Veldora was eaten by your kind, and it will not happen. Although I thought he was a bit shrewd, I didn't expect him to lose to the monster demon lord. I will never admit it. I won't spare you. A furious Veilgrind began to shoot the hot line indiscriminately. Unfortunately, however, that didn't work for me. However, through the conversation I just had, I also figured something out. Veilgrind was so angry because of me devouring Veldora, so she probably misunderstood that Veldora was killed by me or wiped out completely. That being the case, that's a good thing. This is the time to unleash the dragon liberation and clear up the misunderstanding. But wait, Rimuru. The person in charge, Veldora, however, stopped me. What's wrong? Out of fear of asking so. Listen up, Rimuru. Sister right now is into a rage thinking I've been wiped out, right? Well, that's right. That's why I'm putting you out to explain, so maybe it'll avoid a pointless fight. Stupid. Don't be so hard on yourself. If my sister sees that I'm safe and sound, she can't laugh and pretend that nothing happened. I'm going to have all that anger pushed on me. What an idiotic answer. It feels like it's a big loss just to listen carefully. I was so scared, I thought I'd stopped breathing. Looking at such a noisy Veldora, I completely understood that this guy was completely unreliable. That being said, this man really is not useful at every critical moment. Feeling too dumbfounded to listen carefully, I was about to complain to him when Seal came out and stopped me. Wait a minute, please. In that case, why don't you take this opportunity to make the most of Veldora's powers, which I've already given my permission for. So please wait until the power reform is complete before implementing Storm Dragon Liberation. Same old, polite and attentive tone. According to the Seal, it was the revolution of Veldora's ultimate skill, the King of Investigation, that evolved into the ultimate skill, the King of Chaos. Since it's said to be evolution, presumably it's been reinforced. What concerns me is the phrase, which I've given my permission for. In fact, Seal's existence was actually known to Veldora. When did it start? When Lord Rimuru had just evolved into a demon lord, he sensed my presence. Seal replied thus. Although I've noticed it, I'm just now convinced. In the end, it's just a skill that has developed a sense of self, something that has never been heard of in ancient times. However, the power of the Great Sin system has something like the ego, which is why I began to doubt it. According to Veldora, it seemed like he had been suspicious since the time when the seal was still the Great Sage. After observing my stomach pouch, I noticed all kinds of strange phenomena from time to time. As I evolved into the Demon Lord and the Great Sage became the King of Wisdom, he seemed to be sure that his guesses were most likely correct. So far they seem to have had quite a few conversations with each other, but Veldora has always assumed that the person speaking was me. It didn't cause much trouble, but it still makes one wonder what these two talked about. Those aside, Veldora actually knew Seal, the most important thing about it. That is, you two actually know each other. And then, you agree with Seal's proposal, right? Well, that's exactly what happened. Although I also wanted to be my sister's opponent, I couldn't do it because of this reason. I'm sorry, Rimuru, but I'll leave it all to you. Hey, you're too kind, aren't you? That's not the same as what I just said. I was going to spit it out like that, but I always thought it would make me look sad, so I just let it go. Seal also seems to want to play around with the Veldora ability. I was thinking that there's no need to do it now, but after liberation it might be more troublesome to do it again. Plus, I'd actually love to try my hand at the power. There was still Rudra to deal with afterwards, so one had to know how strong one had become. That's what I thought. I should be able to fight her with ease, so let's check how much I've grown in various aspects. It's a rare opportunity. While I keep an eye on my companions, it's better to let them try their hand at it before they get into a crisis. It's better that way. Seal seemed very happy. After some thought I had an idea for a fight, but again Seal spoke a proposal as if in passing tone. According to the results of various analyses, it is possible to combine the ultimate power of Storm King Veldora and Covenant King Uriel to create a new ultimate skill, King of Stellar Wind. Should it be implemented? Seal-sensei, you have no intention at all to weigh yourself down. Next up is a fight with Veilgrind. How easy is that? Veilgrind was out of sight, Seal was practically saying it. Modifying skills seem to be of interest to Seal, but please, that kind of thing, please wait until the usual. Let's dismiss it for now. Maybe there's a better way to improve this? So be cautious and think about it later. True to its owner. I see. Then I'll aim to get better and keep growing. Aha. It looks like acceptance, which is better than anything. I don't know if there's any me in there, but it's a good way to focus on the fight. The King of Covenant is valid for Veilgrind, and I could not throw away that advantage, even if I were to have the advantage. Of course, the King of Gluttony alone might win, but this is not a game after all, and carelessness is not an option. Never allow for what-ifs. I understand that Seal is very high on me, but feel free to take half of it as flattery in the future. That said, Seal's transformation fetish is a real head-scratcher. Veldora is now used as fodder, but since I was so hopeful, it's all right. However, the problem is after this fight is over. There was always a hunch that a great overhaul of abilities awaited those of my companions who had awakened into demon lords. If it was Seal-sensei, even the reinforcement of those guys would have been easy to catch. I even think that the teacher was actually waiting for this opportunity all along. Maybe, it could have been. Just as I was pondering these things, the time had come to go head-to-head with Veilgrind. Me and the true red flying dragon were staring at each other in the sky. After Veilgrind momentarily changed into human form, the battle began tangibly. She fired nuclear strike magic at me in succession, the heat harvest cannon, while swinging the green dragon blade at me. What is the difference between anthropomorphism and dragon form? This question, if illustrated in one sentence, would yield the answer of a defensive gap. The offense is exactly the same. In terms of energy utilization efficiency, the human form is overwhelmingly dominant, and the corresponding human form's ability to fight continuously will increase. In other words, if there is to be a long-term battle, the human form is more appropriate. However, the dragon form also has the advantage of being irreversible. That's the huge body. The body becomes huge and the scale of the attack increases accordingly. Although equally powerful, the attack range becomes wide, making the dragon form suitable for use in battles with multiple opponents simultaneously. In addition, even if there was only one enemy, it was very difficult to evade the attacks unleashed by the giant enemy in succession. Then there is the defensive aspect. This was the true value of the dragon form. In order to take out such a huge body, one had to make a massive attack to match it. Trying to take down the dragon form with a sword was extremely difficult, and most of the magic attacks were rendered meaningless because of the size of the attack. Even if we ignore the fact that there is very little magic that works on the dragon race, there is no point in using human magic on the dragon race. There was little if any damage that could be done if not wide-range magic. So, the hard way is that the dragon form side is stronger. However, Veilgrind chose to fight in human form. Her thoughts were mostly, presumably, in order to be able to settle the master with certainty, defense was abandoned. That's roughly how it feels. In that case, I'll fight her on that premise as well. The murderous look on her face, however, set off Veilgrind's beauty even brighter. She boarded that killing chi on the blade and swung down the green dragon's sword with an aura that was going to split me in two. Naturally, I wasn't going to let her cut me. The magical counterpart was handed over to Seal, and I drew my own blade, the straight blade of the divine glory Vajra, to face Veilgrind. The green dragon sword in Veilgrind's hand is a broad-edged machete. She hadn't hidden the knife before, but had just made it out of material creation. This was a divine soldier whose rank rivaled that of a mythical weapon. In contrast, my sword also rose to the mythical level when I became a true dragon. As threatening as Veilgrind's green dragon blade is, my weapon should not lose to her. More than that. Snap. With this crisp sound, Veilgrind's green dragon blade snapped and shattered. As surprised as I was, Veilgrind must have been even more taken aback. "What have you done?" She first distanced herself from me, then asked so. I didn't actually do anything but simply take the opponent's attack. So I didn't know how to answer when you asked me what I did. The weapon's performance gap. The Master's straight sword is a famous sword created by Kurobi with all of his soul, while Veilgrind's green dragon sword is nothing more than the product of fixing magicules. Although the density of mana is amazing and has the equivalent of mythical performance, it is just a dull knife by its very nature. Is that what's going on? Although I already knew that weapons would vary in strength even of the same level, I didn't expect that there would be such a big difference between weapons of the same mythical level. Sure enough, what one can rely on is one's own used equipment. It's good to understand that, after all, my clothes are made from material creation. They're also mythical grade, but it's better not to expect too much from it. It's clear from the demonstration just now that even with the same class, there is a difference in performance. The weapons you have created will not defeat my sword. Although I don't think Veilgrind will give up on this, I still say so to her. Veilgrind was by no means a fool. She seemed to have seen that my words weren't a lie, but she still couldn't seem to accept it, and then made the green dragon blade come at me several times. Those green dragon blades were all broken. Finally, Veilgrind came to terms with reality. She stared at me defiantly while making her next attack. Since the weapons created were useless, all that could be relied upon was one's own flesh. Veilgrind lets her paws lengthen and sets up a Chinese jab-style stance. Seeing her like this, I also put away my knife. What do I mean by that? To experiment, of course. I also wanted to make sure I had grown to the point where I didn't rely on the knife anymore. If you use a weapon, you'll become a bully, so I'll be your opponent with my bare hands. A fight is supposed to provoke the other person. If Veelgrind can be made to lose her cool on this, it is not too much to say that it is a win or lose from this point on. Don't underestimate people. It's a hit. It's so easy to be funny that Veelgrind fell into my trap. What followed was nothing more than playing chess like a general and pushing her into desperation one step at a time. Veelgrind clawed away at a very fast pace. Therefore, trying to keep up with her movements by sight was impossible. However, now my perception speed is equally extraordinary. The speed of thinking acceleration has been increasing since I gave the name Seal to the King of Wisdom. What was originally 1,000,000 times faster, is now hundreds of millions of times more so. Shockingly, this is the level at which even the speed of light can be perceived. Of course, even if I can see it, it doesn't mean that I can correspond at the same speed, and such a misunderstanding is not to be avoided. But that's not to say there aren't recusal methods. It is not necessary to say that the unleashing of magic is naturally faster. Even the unleashing of space shift has become nearly 1,000 times faster. In other words, as long as I can keep a certain distance, I can escape even with light speed attacks by shifting. A second feels like it's been stretched into a decade, and so produces a world that seems to stand still. Since one's self would also become as if unable to act, the ordinary human self would collapse due to not being able to bear the feeling, but Seal only unleashed the thinking acceleration when it mattered and smoothly solved the problem. So no matter how much Veelgrind's speed there is, it's not a problem for me. At this point, I no longer need to think about physical arts, swordsmanship, or other techniques, and I can suppress her with brute force alone. Veelgrind overdrive attacks closing in. Her speed had reached hundreds of